Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. Welcome back to the Roatan Brew Show here at the Wave 101.1 FM. And I'm very excited to have, very special guests. Sometimes we have people here on the island who are here just for a little bit. And that little bit of time that they're here, they try to take a vacation, they try to relax, but they get, kind of ambushed by some of the people here on the island, including myself, because Brenda is a fingerprint examiner expert. And I'm really excited to have her here because she's going to explain to us how her expertise can affect the way the police do their work here and how uh, more arrests that are made will be able to stick. We had a meeting last week with the judge, and the judge said that we need to find better ways to gather evidence. If you don't gather enough evidence, I, as a judge, have to release that criminal no matter what kind of crimes they've done. If there's not enough evidence, we have to release them. They don't want to release them. If the evidence was there, they would not release them. But gathering evidence has been a problem. But many, many different people on the island are working on that. And one of the ways that we can work on that is with people like Brenda Busch. So, Brenda, thanks so much for coming on the show and taking the time from your downtime to come on the show, and even I'm going to thank you in advance a little bit here because I know that you are interested in helping Roatan. I know you're interested in helping the police. So I want to thank you so much for spending the time here to come on the show and for being willing to help the police here on the island.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. You're right. I came here in the middle of August for some R&R. I had just finished up almost 2 years over in Iraq, where I was working as a fingerprint examiner, processing items brought into me by the different military units, trying to find latent fingerprints on them. Due to operational security, I'm not really able to say exactly the types of evidence that would be brought in, but generalized illegal weapons caches, items of explosive components, things like that. And we were actually very successful in retrieving fingerprints, and we actually got quite a few identifications, and one led me to go testify in the Central Criminal Court of Iraq.
That is really interesting. I never would have thought for a second that with all that goes on in places like Iraq or Afghanistan, that fingerprinting would be important. So this is going to be a fascinating show. Let me ask you, Brenda, tell me a little bit about you. Tell me where you grew up. Tell me where you got your education from, and really, especially, how in the world did you get into fingerprinting?
Well, I started out working for the County of San Bernardino back in 1989, worked in one division, and I saw a job announcement for forensic specialist. And the job announcement described it pretty much like what you see on television on CSI. It intrigued me, seemed very interesting, and I thought, man, I would love to do that. So I, at that time, was not qualified for that position, so I began taking classes at community colleges and volunteering with the sheriff's department there just to get my foot in the door. And I gained some experience. I gained the necessary requirements which would enable me to take the test, apply and take the test for forensic specialist, is what it was entitled at that time. Back in 97, I interviewed for the position, and I was hired as an entry-level fingerprint examiner. I worked in that position for about 2.5 years before I promoted up to latent fingerprints, which latent fingerprints are those which are found at crime scenes. I worked there in that unit. I'd like to say, by the way, if I may interrupt, I've got some folks, hopefully, from my old office listening, so I'd like to say hi to Letitia and Jan Sharon, Patty, Amber, and all of the people over at Cal ID. I'm thinking of you. So anyway, thanks for that. And I worked there for about 10 years when previously mentioned Letitia came to me with a job announcement that she had found online saying that fingerprint examiners were being sought to go over to Iraq. I'm an adventurous person. I like living life on the edge, and it intrigued me. So I started the application process, got my certification through an international association, and I spent almost 2 years in Iraq.
So now that you've got me thinking about it, when people lay bombs on the street, when people, they have to put their hands all over when they make these bombs. And is there any way that you can retrieve evidence after a bomb has gone off?
Yes, there is. There's almost always components of that bomb left over. Oftentimes in Iraq, we would have the initiator. Sometimes we would have what we call, and I don't want to say too much, but a pressure strip. And the Iraqis use a lot of tape. They tape everything. I would receive items that I thought that there was a piece of evidence, and I would unravel the tape and spend hours or days on tape just to find that's all that it was just a big wad of tape. But tape yields fabulous fingerprints. And many times I would find 2, 3, 5, 10 latent fingerprints on tape. If they can find anything at the crime scene, even if it's something simple like there's a cigarette butt here and the people who live at this house or in this car don't smoke, maybe this was the suspect. Recover it. We can dust that cigarette butt for fingerprints. If they have a DNA unit, they can also submit it, of course, for DNA. But nothing should be excluded as possible evidence. If something is found at a scene that seems out of place or like it was probably or possibly belonging to the suspect, it needs to be recovered. Because the worst thing that could happen is we won't be able to get fingerprints, but if they don't recover it, we absolutely won't.
So how does it work? You could get all the fingerprints that you want, but if you don't have the fingerprints of millions and millions and millions of people, it's not going to work. It's going to kind of go right through it. Or does everybody have fingerprints on file and we might not even know it?
In the United States, most public service jobs, you have to be fingerprinted during the hiring process. So we've got there's two segments of fingerprints. There's applicant and applicant fingerprints, and then there's criminal/registrant fingerprints. Anytime somebody is taken into custody, into the city or county jail system, their fingerprints are taken. That builds a very large database. We've got an enormous database in the United States. Cities have their own, counties have their own, states. Database is comprised of all those who submit. The county in which I worked, we had a database we shared with another county, a neighboring county. We had in our database probably just over 1 million records, and that's just in 2 California counties. I don't know how many the entire state has in their database. And then it goes even further. You've got the FBI, who has many of those, as well as applicant. Military personnel, they have their fingerprints in a civil database as well. In Iraq, we were building up a very nice, extensive database because once the occupation began happening and we started cleaning things up, so to speak, in 2003, in order for a person to receive a resident card, an identification card which showed I'm supposed to live in this city, they had to have a complete biometrics scanning done. They had their iris scans done, facial, photograph, as well as fingerprints. Those fingerprints have been getting uploaded into a database here in the United States since I think 2003, 2004.